Welcome to another episode of Bucket List Coach Web Show Live. Well, hello, and he's back. Gerald Leekey, and we'll get right to him here in a minute. My name is Cindy Lee. I've had this podcast since 2017, and for about 4 years, I started the Aviation podcast. So we have our aviators and our aviation geeks on the 19th of August and also the week of, like right now, it's National Aviation Week. Then coming up in November, we have another amazing week of aviation for National Aviation History Month. Gerald Leekey, the Boeing 777. How are you?
Hey, excited to be here and talk about my favorite thing, which is airplanes, as always.
Yes. So let's talk about your start in airplanes. So you actually were here in California working at an airfield. Is that how you started?
Right. Yeah. I mean, my just crazy about airplanes since I was a kid, and as soon as I could, I got a job on the airport washing planes and cleaning planes, and then eventually fueling planes, and then I was loading bags onto airliners as a baggage handler,
Wow.
or a bag smasher, as we called ourselves in those days, and then went in the military. So it was a kind of a long road, but always happy to be around airplanes no matter what.
So you've had two ultimate career bucket lists, F-14 Tomcat and now the 777.
Yeah, and it really is a bucket list, to be honest with you, Cindy, because I think, the kids that grow up that want to be fighter pilots, to me, those guys seemed like just, that was an unreachable goal, like being an astronaut or, it was just anytime I was ever around a fighter pilot, they were walking gods on earth to me. So, um, you know, I was rejected by the Air Force, rejected by the Navy several
Oh,
times, and you go through this cycle of rejection letters, and you want to you think, oh well, of course they don't want me. They have amazing people, and I'm not amazing. I'm just a regular person. And eventually, just through perseverance and a little bit of luck, I suppose, I got selected to go to officer candidate school for the Navy, and then flight school. And because of my experience in aviation, I believe, because I had started flying airplanes as a teenager and through college, I was able to do pretty well in flight school. So that made the difference for me to get to the F-14. And, a lot, I don't know about other folks, but I still had imposter syndrome when I walked out to fly that F-14 for the first time, that
wow,
just couldn't
really?
believe that I was going to get to do that somebody would trust me with a $40 million machine like that. And I get equally excited now. I'm a captain on a 777 for a major airline, and I'm, going to work. Every time I go to work, it's a dream come true. And when I stand outside of the machine and I look at it from the outside, I'm just blown away that I get to be in command of that machine, that I'm in charge. When you're a captain, you're kind of responsible for the whole operation, and there's a lot that goes with that. And people think, oh, you worry about all the people you carry around. There's so many things that go on in a day-to-day operation around aviation, and they have to have somebody to point the finger at when things go wrong. And so, as a captain, you kind of it's not on a normal nice day. It's not a particularly super challenging job, but there's always things going wrong. You have, over 300 passengers, you have over 200,000 pounds of fuel, you have hundreds of bags, you have 11 flight attendants, you have two, maybe three first officers, and you have gate agents and ground crew, and you have a million parts on the airplane that can malfunction, or many times on a machine that complex, we're operating in a degraded mode in some way or another that's legal to operate at. So I know that frightens people. They always think, oh, airplanes, everything's going to work perfectly, but sometimes we don't have all the things that we want. The last couple of times I went to work, we didn't have the aft galley refrigerators were not working, and they
Wow.
wanted me to take this plane all the way across the ocean, and as a captain, I had to make a decision that was legal to do, but I had to say, no, I'm not going to do that because we can't serve food that's been sitting at room temperature for
Foodborne
10
illness.
hours in the morning, right? People are going to get sick. So I had to refused the airplane until it was fixed. It took 2 hours. They fixed the airplane. I felt terrible for all the passengers on the airplane that had to wait 2 hours, but
Mhm.
we got them to their destination. And it doesn't always work out that way. We were within a few minutes of becoming illegal for rest, and we might not have gone that day. So those are the kind of decisions you're faced with sitting in the cockpit is it safe? What's best for the crew? What's best for the passengers? Um, and it's not always intuitive, and it's not always what the legality says is the best decision to do. So that's what the job is really as a pilot. And I told my kids this when they wanted to fly airplanes was that the the most important skill in being a good pilot is your decision making ability.
Mhm.
And people love to talk about, oh, this guy was an amazing aerobatic pilot, or this guy was the best dogfighting pilot, or this person's the best bomb dropper, or this person was the best landing on the carrier. All those things are great, and they're very important to the overall job. But in the end, it's the decision making that will get you killed, and it's the decision making that will make you get from one end of the flight to the other safely. So that's not always easy to teach, decision making, right? We all have our own levels of risk that we're willing to take. And as a captain, that's my job to kind of decide what level of risk am I willing to go, or what are the things that I think are okay and not okay. And generally, I'm pretty conservative because in the end, it's the job. I want to go home at the end of the day and enjoy my days off. So I'm under no pressure, and no pilot in the United States is under pressure to take an airplane. I have almost never heard the company come and pressure a pilot. We really need you to take this airplane. On occasion, they do, but they back off right away when you say the word safety. And if you say, "Oh, I just don't feel comfortable with this," they go, "Okay, we'll get you a new airplane, or we'll wait till this weather moves through, or whatever the circumstances are." And that can include problem passengers. You have people come on the airplane that have anxiety. They take drugs. They've been drinking to try and reduce their anxiety, and then they have irrational behavior. And as a captain, you might have to make a decision to have a passenger removed because it's in the interest of all the passengers that we take that person off the airplane so that we don't have to divert to Iceland, Greenland,
Oh, wow.
somewhere, Adak, Alaska, or who knows, because we have an emergency because a person is, become violent. And many times they don't even remember doing those things. Of course, you have a higher altitude inside the cabin when you're at altitude as well. So if we're at 40,000 feet, the cabin might be at 7,000 feet. So that altitude change for somebody who lives, say, in Miami, they may not be used to being at 7,000 feet. That's an additional degradation to their cognitive function. So they do irrational things sometimes in airplanes. And those are things you have to deal with at altitude. There's nowhere to go. There's no police to call.
Mhm.
If you're lucky, you might have an air marshal on board, but that's that's not really their job to interdict in that case. To be honest with you, they're there for pure law enforcement for terrorist attack, and so they're not going to be drawn off on a distractor that might be someone trying to get them to expose themselves.
So I'm going to pop off for a little bit and share this podcast. Kind of talk about some stories, some feedbacks from passengers, thanking you for a great flight, or just thanking you in general on how you made their day.
Well, one of my favorite ones is I was in Phoenix one time, and uh, we were getting ready to go, and I got a text message from another captain, another crew, that said they had some passengers on board that were connecting to Hawaii. and they were supposed to arrive about the same time as we were supposed to leave. Well, most airline policy is to close the door about 10 minutes prior, but since I had some notification, I was able to go up, and I went into the actual terminal, and I asked the agents to hold on just a second, and I asked where the airplane was coming in, and the airplane that was coming was at the gate right next to us. And so I waited by the door, and as they parked the airplane and the door opened, these four people came running up the jet bridge at full speed, trying to make their connecting flight. And I tried to slow them down. I said, "Hey, are you guys going to Maui?" And they just ran right by me, ignoring me, trying to get to the gate, not realizing that I was the pilot that was taking them on the next leg of their journey. So I knew they weren't going to let them on my airplane just yet, so I walked over to my gate, and there they were standing there, and I said, "Hey, I tried to grab you guys, and but I've been waiting for you so that we can continue on to your next destination." And they were super grateful, and we were able to put them on the airplane and get them to where they needed to be, it was great. You know, they were grateful, and we love doing things like that. Now, there's other times when we have another airplane that's waiting for our gate, and they say, "Hey, we need you to move your jet, so you have to go out on time." And we say, "Oh, we know we're waiting for 10 more people." And they're like, we don't have a choice. The operation is much larger than just one person trying to make a flight. So I don't think that the average passenger, I hear people quite often on the airplane going, "Do you think they'll wait for us?" And no, we don't usually wait for people. That's not the policy. They want to get the airplanes moving because there's another airplane coming in, or that airplane that you're taking out, it's connecting to a whole nother place that day, and there's a very short period of time where they have to make that connection. So
Yeah, and they
you
will
know,
call your name. I remember when I worked on a cruise ship in Hawaii, and I decided at the end of my term that I wanted to stay in Maui for a couple extra days. So I was running late because I really didn't want to go to the airport. Cynthia Rhodes, and I'm like running. Everyone's looking at me like, "Why are you late?" Yeah, so I think that was the last time I almost missed a flight. That was it for me.
yeah, the best thing there is to be
It's
there,
the walk
an
of
hour
shame,
before
right?
or whatever. It's not fun, but but even with connecting flights, you feel terrible because we connect, you have people coming into Los Angeles, and they're going to London, and they're connecting from Phoenix or from Seattle or wherever, and we can't wait for them, and they're like, "Why didn't you have the plane wait?" And it's just, no, that airplane's got to go all the way to London, and it has a specific window of when it can cross the Atlantic. That's the flight plan is set up far in advance, because there's thousands of airplanes crossing the Atlantic Ocean. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, we can't delay it. But that there's the well, can't you? We got off late. Can't you make the plane go faster, or aren't there any shortcuts? And I'm kind of disheartened to hear pilots quite often. They say, "Well, we're going to try and get shortcuts, or we'll try and go faster." The reality is that most flights are in almost a straight line. When you see that curved line on the map, that's because of the globe is a ball. So the
Mhm.
Great Circle route, it looks like a curve on a flat map. But the reality is we're going about as straight line as we can go most of the time, unless we have to go around a hurricane, or we have to, there's a volcano or some other airspace restrictions like Ukraine or whatever. But the other thing is the airplane is cruising at about 80% the speed of sound.
Mhm.
And we call that Mach decimal 8.84 is what the 777 typically cruises at. Our maximum Mach speed, the maximum speed of the airplane, is decimal 86. So you're talking about, 2/100ths of a decimal point faster that you could go. And to go to that maximum speed, I would have to push the throttles up to burn a tremendous amount of fuel to get that tiny little bit of extra speed that over a period of 8 hours might give you 5 minutes. So your chances of making up time are pretty low. The places we can make up time is taxiing to the runway, which runway we get to take off on, how close the gate is to the runway. Things like that can make a big difference. Or a huge tailwind. In the winter crossing the Atlantic, occasionally we have 200-mile-per-hour tailwind. And I had a 5-hour flight from Miami to LA once, going into the 200-mile-per-hour wind.
Oh
And guess
Lord.
what? It took us 7 hours almost to get to Los Angeles. So, you can't, the math is math, physics is physics, and that's just how it is sometimes. So I wouldn't expect that people can make up much time when they're flying your airplane, unfortunately.
And
Uh,
one thing people don't understand is when a pilot is landing a plane and it's a little bit of a rough landing, it's because of the wind. So can you kind of explain that? Because I know some
oh
people
yeah,
like, oh, it's
that
just
is
a
that
windy
is
day.
definitely
Vegas
true.
gets that,
Yeah, we get a lot of heat coming off on a hot day, on a sunny day. That'll cause updrafts and downdrafts. So usually, right before you get to the runway, you've got a downdraft because it's grass and that's cooler. And then as you come over the runway, the air is hot and it's going up. But if it's really windy, you might have a crosswind moving across the airport, and you have all these buildings, these big hangars and such. And as the wind travels over those buildings, it causes it to get disturbed. And then as you're coming into land, it can cause the airplane to wobble around and stuff. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the art of a good landing is learning to anticipate those kind of things and understanding what you're looking at, and that comes through experience typically. And all these different size airplanes, you have fighter pilots coming from little airplanes and then trying to land a big airplane. And this is something, another myth that I love is, people think, oh, you were a fighter pilot. Isn't flying airliners boring? I don't find it boring. I find it amazingly interesting, and I find it, I enjoy every minute of it. I love traveling to all these different countries and the great layovers that we get to enjoy. I love the different crews and the different airspace, and be honest with you, the amazing sights that you see as a pilot. The
Oh
view is spectacular. The sunrises and sunsets that I have seen are just indescribable. The northern lights, satellites, Starlink and rocket launches, and I've seen satellites re-entering the atmosphere, and
yeah.
all these amazing weather phenomenon. One thing I have never seen is UFOs or aliens. So, and people always want to ask, oh, what about, haven't you ever seen? And then you go, well, no. And I don't know any pilots that I know that actually have either. And then they always kind of give you the side eye, like, are you lying to me? You know? And you're like, no, I'm not. I have no reason to lie. Well, the government wouldn't let you tell us anyways. It's just, I wish I would like to be the guy who gets to see the aliens. That would be pretty neat. But no, I haven't seen anything quite that interesting. But I have seen a lot of interesting things, and flying the airplane is very fun. And I feel pity for the fighter pilots that I have known in my career that didn't go to the airlines because they already flew the greatest plane to fly in the world, whatever that is, an F-16, F-18, whatever, and now they don't want to drive a bus. And it's really, to me, I think that's an ego problem. Generally, they have an inferiority complex that they would go from being at the top to having to start off as a first officer again in the airlines, because that's how it works. You come out of the military and you go to the bottom at the airline, and you have to work your way up to captain. And they have a hard time thinking, oh, I was the best, I was a squadron commander, and now I have to sit as a co-pilot. That's not fair.
Yeah.
No, that's just how it works. So, I
So
mean,
that's called the FO, right? First officer.
right, a first officer. And
Yeah.
so we have typically on a long haul flight, 8 hours to 12 hours, three pilots, one captain, two first officers, and then after we take off, we're all three in the cockpit, and then after we take off, the one will go in the back and be on break for 2 hours or so, and then
Mhm.
either the captain or the other first officer will go back on break. That person will come up. All the first officers are captain qualified and rated to be captains on those airplanes. They're just not paid for it, and they're not wearing the four stripes, but they are qualified to be captains. So while they're sitting up there in the cockpit and the captain is in the back, the getting rest, then we swap out so that we're all rested when we land at the destination. When we have a flight over 12 hours, we have four pilots, sometimes two captains, but we'll go on shifts. So it's great. We call it dozing for dollars. You get half your time, you get to sit in the back and we have a whole rest area, first class seats, nice beds. The flight attendants have great meals for us, and you have every comfort that you possibly need to get a couple hours of rest. Or you can watch a movie. It's your choice. It's a nice way to get paid. We call it, like I said, dozing for dollars. So being in the back on your rest break is not a bad thing.
So, anything else you would like to talk? I would like to cover something. Hopefully, it's not too racy, but all these news outlets will talk about this, that, and the other about airplanes, and there's more car accidents than there are airplane accidents.
Oh,
And how would
safety
you make
wise?
them feel comfortable? You know.
Yeah, I mean, the news media is in the business of making money, right? So they love to sensationalize and create hyperbole around these kind of things. So they love to say, "Oh, two airplanes crashed into each other at LAX," and what they're not telling you is that, oh, the ground crew was backing one airplane in and another, and they didn't see each other and they touched, and it's like, oh, okay, now the airplane's broken. But that's not a crash, but that's the headline reads that way, right? Or, the headlines are terrible. But to be honest with you, the safety mentality at the major airlines in the United States is absolutely world class, and I think people would be absolutely blown away if they could get inside the meat of how we teach safety. Like there's this show on right now called The Rehearsal, and this guy he's a very entertaining guy. The show's a great show, but he's like, oh, the airlines only do a PowerPoint slide on how to converse between pilots, and they're not communicating well, and that's the cause of airline accidents. That was true in like 1980. That's not true today. In 2025, for in my entire career, we spend loads and loads of time discussing about how we interact with each other, our standardized communication that we use in the cockpit, understanding human factors, meaning, hey, if a person's going through a divorce, maybe they shouldn't be at work that day, or they had their kid was in an accident and is in the hospital. They're not in a mental state that they should be flying an airplane. They can go home and we'll get another pilot. Those things are okay. And when we get to the cockpit, we share those things with each other. We sit down, we go, hey, how are you doing today? How are you feeling today? Do you want to fly the first leg or would you fly the second leg? Do you want to fly down? Do you want to fly over to London or back from London? Are you rested? We discussed all those human factors that in the past we were too tough, right? We were these, kind of alpha males. I'm fine to do whatever. I can compartmentalize.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah, and we realize that's not how human beings operate anymore. We can't compartmentalize. So if you get a weird vibe coming off the other pilot that you're with, it's okay to say, hey, how's your day going? Do you feel like you're up for this, or what's your and generally everything's fine, but sometimes you find out that people are going through things in their life and it affects the way that they behave at work. And in our business, the way the safety is at the top of that's paramount above everything else is safety. We don't, on time is great. Getting the passengers there with comfort is great. Safety is always the number one thing. So I feel like there's some pretty marginal media out there, and I'll be honest with you, almost every single news story I have ever seen regarding aviation on things that I knew about personally was incorrect in one way or another. They never, ever get it 100% correct. And that makes me skeptical of all news that I watch now, because I know if the things that I know about, that I'm an expert on, they're talking about, they get incorrect, it's very likely that that's true in a lot of cases. So I like to look at multiple sources. I think we're all doing that nowadays, right? If we see a news story, you go, is that real? And then you check other things and go, wow.
No, that's okay. I'll just text you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Any other myths you want to cover today?
Pardon me?
Any other myths you want to cover today?
Any other
myths?
Yeah, I was thinking about all those things, that people, wonder about. I've seen the blogs where people are like, oh, the pilot came out of the cockpit and he was in the galley talking to the flight attendant for 20 minutes, and I don't think that's safe. And you go, yeah, because there was another pilot in the cockpit. There's multiple pilots on the airplane. That's okay. They don't. Yeah, they don't really know what's going on, or they think, one time I took off and we had a water leak, and the water was leaking in the galley pretty badly, so we had to return back and land. And I had a guy come up to the cockpit, this poor guy, and he had a baby in his arms, and I said, we're going to get this fixed and we'll be on our way out of here. Just give us 20 minutes. All he had to do was shut off a water valve and make sure that the water hadn't gone anywhere we didn't want it to go. And while they were doing that, this guy comes to the cockpit with his baby, and he's like, I have children, and I don't want to go if it's not safe, And I turned around and I was like, hey, I have children at home too, and they're the same age as your kid. I mean, I don't have any pressure to take any chances, and we're not going to go until I feel it's safe to go. So you can relax. I guarantee you, we're not leaving until I'm satisfied that this airplane is safe to fly.
So anything else you would like to cover before I go to talking about maintainers?
No, please go ahead.
So I always talk about this at every single show. The value of the maintainers. What do the maintainers mean to you? Both when you were in F-14 and now with the 777.
Yeah, I mean, our lives depend on these people being professional and doing their jobs well, and they know that, and they do amazing work every day, and they get frustrated as we do because, especially in the summer, most of the airlines are flying right to capacity. So they're pushing the airplanes as hard as they can. So, that's why in the summertime things can get weird if you have a weather event. And these maintainers have less time to take care of the airplanes. So what ends up happening is we start carrying broken things. And I'm not talking about radios, radars, and engines. I'm talking about, broken seats, broken ovens, broken lavatories, kind of nuisance items that the airplane is safe to fly with, but they're comfort items for the flight attendants and the crew, and the maintenance guys get a little tired of hearing that they don't have time to fix these things, so they have to make a seat inoperative. And I had a story actually I wanted to tell you that was interesting that's related to that actually. There was, if you're on an airplane and you sit down in your seat and it goes back and it reclines, and then you push it up and it doesn't want to stay upright. Or you're in first class and the seat's electric and it doesn't work, right? And it's like none of the electrical functions are working.
Oh my.
Guess what? That seat is inoperative and they have to remove the passenger from that seat. And if the flight is full, they're not going to have another seat for you. And I've seen passengers get really upset. I paid all this money and I'm in first class and I have to get a seat. And they're like, they're not going to take somebody out of coach to give you a seat, even though you paid more money. It doesn't work that way. So if your seat is broken before we close the door, you're not going. Now, if that seat were to break afterwards, once we're off the gate or taxiing and we're in flight, then we write it up in our logbook and it continues on to the destination where they'll do maintenance on that seat.
Wow.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't like carrying, we can't legally carry a broken seat. It has to either be fixed or it has to be inoperative and a passenger can't sit in that seat. There are certain things that, like we could put the tray table doesn't work right, so we can tape it off and say inoperative. So the passenger might not have a tray table, but they can sit in the seat. So there's all kinds of, legalities that go with all these things. And the maintainers get as frustrated. They want to fix the planes. They do amazing work. They work long hours. In the military, they were young, enthusiastic, and just so thrilled to see us fly those planes after they worked on them. And I could tell you, I felt honored and lucky to have those kind of people working on the airplanes. They're amazing. We love to do flybys for them, and they would love to have us. Hey, sir, can you come by the ship at supersonic? And we'll ask them, and we'll see if they'll let us do it. And if they would, we would do a supersonic pass. It was pretty exciting.
Wow. Yeah. So anything else you like to cover? Any specs on the airplane you like to cover on why you like this airplane?
This airplane is probably the best airliner that Boeing ever built. They have subsequently built the 787. The 777 is bigger. It carries more weight. It goes farther. It's more. I don't know if it's more efficient because of the engines on the 78, but I can tell you it's probably the best long haul airliner in the world right now, and everybody would like to have more of them. But Boeing isn't able to produce them as fast as people want them, frankly. We carry, 350 passengers. We can go 7,000 and 8,000 miles. It's more about, how much time of fuel do you have? We can go, 14, 15 hours of flying, maybe longer. Depends on if you have diverts or how the weather is, all these things, how the winds are. There's a lot of factors involved in how far and how high and all those things. In fact, when we do take off, we're very heavy, so we can't usually climb up to the smoothest altitudes, which is 38, 40,000 feet. We're usually stuck down in the lower altitudes for at least for the first third of the flight until we burn off some fuel, and then we can start climbing up to higher altitudes.
I know Santa Ana is like, woo.
Right. Santa Ana.
Oh my
Santa
God.
Ana, we'd never have a 777, but those 737s, yeah, going out of Santa Ana, you have to do that power reduction as you go over Newport Beach. Yeah. That's not, I mean, it's challenging as a pilot. It's not dangerous, but it's uncomfortable for the passengers, and it's actually kind of silly, to be honest with you. I mean, but hey, it reduces the noise for the folks in Newport Beach, so good for them.
And I don't understand how people put the shade down. Like I want to see it. I'm on an airplane. I want to see us go up, go down.
I don't recommend putting the shade down. In Europe and in the military on the airliners, they would never let you put the shade down for takeoff and landing. There's a good reason for that, because if you have an accident, like one of the gear collapses and you go off the runway, and if there's a fire, you need to look out those windows and see if you can exit on that side of the airplane. If there's a fire on the right, you want to see it through those windows. And if everybody's got their shades down, you'll never know. And you could be opening up an emergency exit into a fire. So I don't know why the FAA hasn't mandated that, but I think it would be a nice safety addition for us in the U.S. because I know they do it in other countries.
But I want to mention San Diego and LA are one of the most beautiful airports to fly into, with all the lights and everything. Also, Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, just the view. And I always keep my shade open. What do you want to say your best views are as a pilot?
I loved flying in Norway when the weather was nice. The views are amazing. Northern Canada, seeing the ice fields, the icebergs, parts of Greenland, Iceland. There's, flying over the Mediterranean, like the Mediterranean coast of France, like Marseille and those places, over the Greek islands. You can see really cool volcanoes where entire islands have exploded, so the island's shaped like you get these remarkable views. I remember going into Brazil one morning and I looked out and I was an obvious meteor crater in front of us, and I said, oh my goodness, that's a crater. It was 10 miles across, gigantic. There's no way from the ground that you would recognize that this was a meteor crater, but from the air it was incredibly obvious. And I marked it on the Latin long, and then when I got on the ground, I Google searched it, and sure enough, it was a meteor crater. And I read it was, 20 million years old or something, but it was amazing. So you see these crazy geographical views, whenever I see meteor crater or the Grand Canyon or Channel Islands coming out of here, or going into Hawaii when you can see all the islands. It's just amazing. I flew over Mount Fuji a couple weeks ago, and I was just blown away. There I am over Tokyo looking at Mount Fuji. How cool is this? It was really, really neat stuff.
Wow. It's amazing to have you on here. And I need to see if this is our 4-year or a 5-year anniversary. And see if we can get everybody together and, get Lorenzo back on. And also our friend that wrote that book, The Accidental Engineer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be a really great crew. Had Taco on today and Robin Stern earlier. They're talking about marine aviation.
Oh, yeah. There's so many interesting people, and there's some great, really charismatic folks that have great stories to tell that you could have on. I mean, some good. There's always great stories in aviation, And as they say, bad decisions make for good stories. So usually you can tell your best stories and go, yeah, I really messed up when I did this.
And so what's your schedule for November for Aviation History Month? You have a big flying schedule during that time of year?
I don't know what I'm doing in November yet. We get our schedules monthly, so right now I only have my schedule for September. In September, I'm supposed to go to London a couple times and Sao Paulo, Brazil a couple times.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you've ran into Taco there a couple of times, haven't? I think you talked about that
I
on the
see
show.
Taco all the time. We text all the time. I see him at the training center occasionally, and you know, he's always got the best stories, and he's a super professional. He's a check airman now on the 787. He was
Yes.
on the 737 for years, so now he's joining us back in the long haul flying club, and he's a member of the Royal Air Force Club in London.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of fun to go there with him and have a beverage and look around the Royal Air Force Club in London. It's pretty interesting. Great history there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for coming on today. So now this part of the show, we're going to do some shout outs. Who would you like to shout out today?
Well, my shout out is always to the F-14 Tomcat radio show, and that is the show that I was invited to be on a few times with Lorenzo. They do an amazing, they do really entertaining podcasts, basically inviting naval aviators on that have either flown the F-14, and sometimes they've flown a lot of other airplanes too, but to tell their most interesting stories. So yeah, kind of try to keep it lively and interesting. It's sometimes we talk about technical things occasionally, but really I try to keep it more about the actual feeling of what it was like to be on a carrier and flying those airplanes, and what they enjoyed the most about their careers, and the most interesting stories of. And every single naval aviator has 2 or 3 near-death experiences in their career, at least in my generation. I can tell you for a fact. And some have even more. So the stories can sometimes be just jaw-dropping, that what these people have been through. Ejections, combat, etc.
And I want to do a shout out to Lorenzo as well. And here later in the show notes, either Leekster or myself will post that link. And also a big shout out to David Biobaronic. Just turned 60 on the 29th, and he did attend the roasting ceremony. So it's a big shout out.
Oh, I was so disappointed I missed that. And yeah, I just turned 60 myself in June, so we're getting up there. Bunch of old guys.
Yeah, right. Well, you know what? Now we're a matter of fact, I think it was today or yesterday was National Senior Day. So a lot of places now over 55 get your senior discount. I was just at Yanks the other day. Yeah, I got to see the F-14 that Bios. It's his same squadron, so it's really amazing. Over 200 airplanes there in Chino.
I think there's one from his squadron in Torrance, at the Torrance airport.
Oh, the Torrance one also? Wow.
Yeah, I believe that's from his squadron. I'm not 100% sure, but you'd have to ask him.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. And a big shout out to your wife and son. And, you know, hopefully we'll get a chance to meet up with them again. And everything that you do for aviation, from the F-14 Tomcat to American Airlines. Yeah, thank you for what you do. I appreciate you so much. And
hey,
thank
happy
you for
to be
always
here.
making the time to come on and share your knowledge.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. I'm going to put you in the green room and hang tight for about 30 seconds, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Thanks. All right, guys, go out and live your best life. There's so many different ways that you can mark off your aviation bucket list. You could actually reach out to me at 714-604-9246. I have many different aviation bucket list vacations that I could book for you. Also, if you subscribe to the podcast at Bucket List Coach Web Show Live on YouTube, and you share one of our videos, especially this amazing video, you'll be in the running for a free bucket list ebook, and also some great tips there on aviation, some aviation movies, as well as some museums to try all around the world. I'll see you just on the other side.